Greetings. This is Yasir Rahotep of Kemetic YogaSkills. I am here in Baltimore with my good friend and colleague, Miss Michele Blu.
Peace, greetings.
And I have come here to, conduct workshops and teacher trainings and stuff. But I wanted to, it occurred to me that people should know who Michele Blu is. I call her the incredible Michele Blu. And so I have her here and I want her to talk about herself. We're just going to exchange some, information and just have a conversation. And so Michele is among other things, I'm just going to give her a brief introduction. Michele is a certified Kemetic yoga instructor here in the Baltimore area. And she has studio, but she's been a model, an entrepreneur in the sports industry, fitness industry, I should say, maybe. She's a business owner. She's a committed Black woman committed to our community here in Baltimore. She's a mother, a grandmother, and very beautiful sister, my dear friend. So I just wanted to bring her in. And so tell us, Michele, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. It's been a really great weekend of Alchemy of Kemetic Yoga, and really excited about graduating future Kemetic Yoga teachers today. So it has been a full and wonderful weekend.
Yeah.
Very rewarding.
So what's the full name of your studio? Let me get that right.
So officially, I actually got the email last night. It will be Blue Treasures Kemetic Yoga and Arts.
Okay.
So that will be the official name of the studio.
Blue Treasures
Kemetic Yoga and Arts.
Blue Treasures Kemetic Yoga and Art. Okay.
Yes, officially Michele Blu Kemetic Yoga and Arts.
Okay.
But it will be Blue Treasures.
Okay, cool. And so So we're completing a teacher training. So you are one of the studios that is authorized to train people to become Kemetic yoga teachers.
Yes.
Yeah. And we also just completed the Alchemy of Kemetic Yoga workshop, which I think is the third or fourth one that we've done here.
I think we've done more than that. Yeah,
more than that.
We go back. We've been 3 studios.
3 studios.
This is the 3rd studio that you have attended of mine. So we go back
go back further than that.
Yeah, at least about 4 years. 4 years now.
Okay.
So it's been way more than that. You've come 2-3 times a year.
2 or 3 times a year. Okay. My mind is so
yes.
Messed up with all kind of stuff I have to do all the time. But and you've been to Jamaica to get your training.
Yes.
And you've done your training, when we have been together in your studio also.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us about your early life. You was born and raised in Baltimore?
Yeah, born and raised here in Baltimore. Went to school here, grew up here, played in these streets here. Watched many shifts and changes in the community and in our city in general. Been a part of it all. Been right here in the midst of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Early on, I used to model here in Baltimore, going to Philly, going to New York, when I had hopes and aspects of being a model. When I was 2, I was the Montgomery Ward circular model on the papers that used to come out to people's houses. So I started that at a very young age. And as I got older, I realized that modeling wasn't for me. It was a vision through the person who had the camera or their lenses that I found it that I didn't want to meet up to, So I always been into fitness. My father, very young, he took us to work out every Tuesday and Thursday. So fitness was was a part of my childhood, and it was always a part of who I was, whether it was running, playing tennis. Every Tuesday and Thursday he was off, so those were days that we were very active at the park or at the track because he also worked out. So um, that was part of my early childhood path, and I actually loved it so much that seeing others not in the best of health in my family and in my community led me to start personal training. I just started doing it on my own. I would meet people at the park and be like, let's work out. I would create um, workout plans for individuals. And then as a collective, we would meet at the park. And then eventually I got certified to be a personal trainer. So that started my fitness journey to help others, to pursue helping others. And so then I started working with Rockaway a clothing line. I was an international sales rep for them. So I was kind of traveling all over the world with Rockaway.
So you was kind of traveling all over the world, huh?
Yeah, kind of. Well, actually, I was traveling. Yeah, there was no kind of. But it was part of my job. So I guess that's why I say the kind of. It was a part of my job. And traveling, I saw a lot of people in, because also fashion has always been a part of who I am as well. And I saw a lot of people in the fashion industry that looked good, but I found that like when traveling, you have to be in shape, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So a lot of people they looked really good, but when it came time to like, because we had to pack up our whole clothing line and we had to ship it out, and we had to get to the airport, or sometimes we had to take that stuff to be shipped ourselves. And some of these people that looked like they were in really good shape that was like struggling, you know. So I would be like, hey, let's just sit down and breathe for a minute, let's do some stretches, you know, and do some lunges so that you could prepare to walk through this. Sometimes you have to hustle through the
Mm-hmm.
airport. So traveling is fun, but you I realized that you have to be in shape to travel as well. And a lot of people weren't. So um, I started having people pay me to train them. You know, they like, what do you do? So I started showing them the regiments that I did, and I had people paying me to train them to get in shape to travel, at least to travel
Mm-hmm.
to work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I found out about yoga because I had chronic back trouble. And they were talking about doing surgery. And I was like, absolutely not. I've been a person who never even took medicine. And so I got a second opinion. And that second opinion told me to go see a chiropractor. And upon seeing the chiropractor, she suggested that I try yoga. And growing up inner city Baltimore, yoga was foreign to us growing up. The image that I had, and most of the people that grew up around me in the inner city in the hood, was that yoga was for white people that had money,
Mm-hmm.
or it was for like that white stay at home soccer mom. Like that was the image we had of yoga. And actually, a sister took me to my first yoga class, which was a Bikram yoga class. And we were the only two blacks there, but it was such an amazing experience. It was like no other workout that I've ever done. And I've done like um, pretty much anything you can name. I've given it a try, and it was nothing that internally felt the way that yoga made me feel. So
Mm-hmm.
that very first class, I decided that that it was something that was going to be a lifelong lifestyle for me, and that I wanted to teach, and that I wanted to one day own a studio. I knew that that was something that I was going to do. And I did Bikram yoga about 6 years. And it's funny that I to this day do not know why, but I guess I do know why. I never pursued or had an interest in teaching Bikram yoga. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what that is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just was a practitioner. I love the sweat, I love the heat and the intensity of how it challenged me. And and then eventually I took a lot of people to yoga. Like in my work industry, I've always kind of like worked in sales and always kind of connected with a lot of people, even if I was the middle person. So I promoted yoga so much. I took a lot of people to yoga. If I walked into an office to do sales and she was like, "Oh, my neck hurt," I'm like, "You need to go to yoga." And the person that said I didn't drive, I'll take you. The person that said I don't have no money right now, I would
Mm-hmm.
pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I pushed it and pushed it a whole lot. And then later I moved. I was living in New Jersey at that time. And then I moved back to Baltimore. And coming back to Baltimore, I stopped doing yoga for a little while because I didn't know where yoga was here in Baltimore. I started in New York City. And funny thing is, I ran into the sister living here in Baltimore who introduced me to yoga in New York and told me about a studio here in Baltimore. So literally that next week, I started, attending yoga and bringing people to yoga. And I worked in construction. And so most of the guys I worked around was in really bad shape. They
Mm-hmm.
really wasn't taking care of themselves. So I was constantly promoting them to go to yoga, give it a try. And a lot of them would give it a try. Most of them would never come back. Um, Bikram yoga is very militant, so it was very discouraging, And I couldn't understand why they wouldn't come back. But now, my journey all these years later, I do understand why they didn't. Most of them didn't like the smell in the room. There was a list of things.
Right.
And so one of the guys that I work with, he was like, "Yeah, Miss Michelle, I got something for you. Come to my yoga class. This yoga class, I know about this guy that I'm in the steam pipe fitting unit. He teaches yoga." I was like, "Let's go." So I went, and that was my first power vinyasa class.
Mm-hmm.
And I fell in love with that because I realized it was an emphasis on breath. Whereas in Bikram yoga, it was very militant. It was like, go more, way more. And because I come from fitness, challenge was always good for me. And one of the things I needed to do was compel my need to be challenged, like
Mm-hmm.
tone that down. So I found in vinyasa, it was different. I was like, okay, I like this. This is better. So I started practicing, and I started going to the guy class, and we got connected. So I was getting certified at that studio, and it wasn't the environment for me. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Right.
It wasn't the environment for me. So I suggested that the brother and I open a studio together,
Mm-hmm.
and his mind started ticking right away. And then he's like, "I don't know how my wife would feel about this." So it's like, "I ain't trying to date you. I don't. I'm here. This is business. Let's sit down and talk with your wife." And so we did, and we opened up the first Black-owned and operated studio here in Baltimore City in 2006.
Okay.
Um,
So you opened up the first, so you're a pioneer. So you opened up the first black-owned and operated yoga studio in the city of
in Baltimore,
Baltimore.
yes.
Yeah, and I find that see, one of the reasons why I'm interested in you know we letting people become aware of all this because the image we have of Baltimore is a lot of it comes from the that show called The
The
Wire.
Wire. Mm-hmm.
So when I
Mm-hmm.
first came. Because when I first started coming here, I was looking around trying to see where this is where they shot
Where
the
the
wire,
wire.
where the wire was, and where some of the characters, whatever.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
but in essence, when I think about Baltimore, I think about Harriet Tubman City, I think about you know Harper's Ferry. I know that's not in Baltimore, but I
Mm-hmm.
think
It's not
about
too far. I
yeah,
hike there.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think about John Brown and
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think about a lot of things that have happened in Maryland historically. I don't really, it's I really don't think about it in terms of the wire, even
Right.
though I'm interested in that, and I
Mm-hmm.
find Baltimore to be very have a lot of variety of things here, but there is a lot of need here for people doing the things that you're doing in our community.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, that's funny you say that. Everywhere I've ever traveled, and I mentioned I'm from Baltimore right away, they say the wire. And
Hmm.
they're like, "Oh, I can't believe a person that looks like you is from Baltimore," or "I can't believe your energy seems so calm. You're from Baltimore."
Yeah.
And I'm like, The Wire is a movie. Of course, um, it's funny. I never watched The Wire, and I was actually an extra on a scene in there, but I've
Hmm.
never watched it yet. I don't even know if I should be saying that out loud, but I grew up here, so it's quite um, a TV version
Right.
of it. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So it's like I know these places, these experience like firsthand. So for me to like watch it on TV is kind of like,
Yeah,
you
well,
know.
it's the same thing with Chicago. It's a lot of shows that they made in Chicago that is supposed to portray Chicago.
Mhm.
I don't really like any of them. I don't really
Mhm.
watch them,
Mhm.
and I don't really like the vibe, And when I go to places, because I've traveled around the world too, and then when I go to places, I say I'm from Chicago. If I'm in a foreign country, the first thing somebody do is put up a machine gun. So,
Right. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's Al Capone days,
Right.
which was
Right.
way long before my
Right.
time
Yeah.
anyway, and then the whole vibe of, you know, um, places like Chicago and Baltimore and Detroit and other places being like murder capitals of the
Right.
world.
Right.
A lot of this stuff is mythological,
Mhm.
this,
Mhm.
because when
Because
you,
it exists everywhere,
yeah,
it's just certain places they um, broadcast it more or make it such a negative image, or
mm-hmm,
it is
mm-hmm,
the image of the city. And that's one of the things that they do in Baltimore, because there's a lot of really great things happening here in Baltimore, lots of talent, lots of things that are very positive here in Baltimore, but there's never really an emphasis on that,
right, right. Well, so what are some of the things you've done in Baltimore that's been, like I know you work with young people who
Mm.
have been exposed to trauma
Mhm.
and a lot of things like that. So, tell us about your work in that area since 2006. You can sort of do it chronologically.
um, so the studio that we opened, I can honestly say that because they covered us on Fox 45. They did like a whole story on us, because not only did we open the first Black owned and operated studio, it was actually in the midst of a recession.
Mm-hmm.
So they like did a story on us on Fox 45, which um, it changed that image, that same image that I had, because a lot of brown and Black people came to the studio and was like, "Yeah, I saw y'all news," and I was like, "Oh, shucks, Black people do yoga," So that encouraged a lot of Black folks to come to the studio. So I could say, during that era, um, a lot of us wasn't doing yoga, because during my early practice, I was maybe one, two, or three at the most of people of color in the classes. And so our studio used to be full with us,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing us on news, like I said, projected that image that, okay, let me give us a try. Black folks do yoga. So we had a large clientele of Black folks that would come to the studio. It was diverse, but we had a lot of Black folks that came through the studio, and most of them, it was their first time trying yoga. And some of those folks are still my students today,
Mm-hmm.
all these years
Mm-hmm.
later. And so that was pretty powerful for me, because my very first class that I took, my my initial goal and my interest was taking it back to my city, um, changing people's perspective the same way that mine's was, that yo, this is not just for white people. This is something that can empower us. Because when I would practice, I could feel like I can conquer the world. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt a sense of calmness, a sense of wanting to connect to community and want other people to. I used to always say it was the best kept secret. Like, we all have to experience this. This is something that can change our environments, change our communities. If we empowered ourselves, it would push forth to empower each other and encourage a sense of togetherness instead of being so separate.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one of the things in Baltimore, like we were talking about yesterday. We have East Baltimore and we have West Baltimore, and it's just literally a street that separates it, and it's literally that separated.
Mm-hmm.
And I always grew up like we all people of color, we all in a black neighborhood. Like, why is this street line separating us? So um I felt that yoga could be one of those things that could bridge that gap. If there's a studio in the center of this, we can come from east, we can come from west, north, south, we could come from all areas and come to the studio and unite together in one
Mm-hmm.
breath.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my mantras I used to say a whole lot. And so yeah, that was pretty exciting to have um, brown and black people come to the studio. And during the years that the studio, I've done work at shelters, um, the House of Ruth, my sister's place, a lot of the community centers. And that was my goal. I did a lot of free stuff because at opening the studio, I really had this image that in 1 year, I would be able to quit my job and I would be making so much money. But right away, I realized that this thing wasn't about money.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had to do
Mm-hmm.
other things to make money because
Right.
teaching yoga has nothing to do with getting rich or making money at all. Like, the 6 years that we were in business, the studio paid for itself. I think it
Mm-hmm.
was like one time that we had to come out of our pockets and cover the
Mm-hmm.
rent. And that was good enough for me because I was there providing the service that was like really healing and helping people. And I realized that was the ultimate goal. It had nothing to do with money at
So,
all.
what are some of the major issues that's confronting the black community in Baltimore?
I could say the opioid.
Mm,
Yeah, that the drugs. I watched the era from crack in the 80s
mm,
really change my own neighborhood that I grew up in, and all of the surrounding neighborhoods in Baltimore. And it seemed like from that era, it just went from one drug to the next. And now I see a big problem with the opioid use,
mm,
and it's really sad because it has no age. I've seen a teenager. I've experienced in the area of Baltimore while waiting for someone sitting in a car. There was a teenager and there was an elder, and they were both in this drug area, and they were nodding out.
mm.
And it was like really like heartbreaking to see that this thing has no age. It's not just the young folks. It's like hitting everybody. So that's one of the major things I see, and also the leadership in the city. We haven't had good leadership in a very, very long time, like someone in charge that's for the people, you know.
Now you have a. Let me make sure I'm not making a mistake. You have a youngish black mayor brother,
Mhm.
a male black male mayor who's
Mhm.
what is it, like in his 30s,
Yes.
40s maybe.
Yes. Mhm.
Mm. So I don't, you don't need to evaluate him, but I've seen him, in response to this incident with the boat
Mhm. Mhm.
crashing into the bridge,
Right.
and the allegation was being made that because you had a black leadership
Mhm.
in Baltimore and Maryland,
Mhm.
that's why the boat crashed into the bridge. you know, and so I thought he did a good job of addressing that.
They blame everything on the black folks,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah. Um. Yeah.
But this is what I wanted to ask you. What are some of the issues that you see in the children of the young, not the children? Well, I know you work with children too, but the young people that you work with, because we've been talking about this, and you
Mhm.
was identifying, how there's a lot of things going on with the population of people that's really traumatizing,
Mhm.
creating a whole generation of traumatized
Mhm.
folks.
Mhm. Um. Yeah, I do. I work with at-risk youth, and it's a range of girls that have been sex trafficked, um, boys that have been sexually molested or they themselves have been the offender,
Mm-hmm.
drug and alcohol, and foster children. So yeah, it's very heavy, and it's so much. I see it goes back to leadership with the parents, because some of these children, it stems from the parents not being there or being a part of the trauma that they
Mm-hmm.
have been exposed to,
Mm-hmm.
um, which that goes back to the drug use, um, the fact that there's one parent home that have to work a lot to maintain the household, so that it's like a list. It just a trickle effect that the trauma is like ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
um
Yeah, I know. By me being a social worker for starting back in the '70s, I guess. Yeah. And seeing this, it's like all this, the issues just remain the same. The drugs are causing a lot of, well, let me put it like this first, because I don't want to just blame drugs
right.
like it doesn't exist in a context,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have the economic displacement,
Mm-hmm.
which is intentional
Exactly.
in a lot of, for the most part, that is decimating the ability of people to actually support themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So what I see and what I have seen in the past is that people become despondent when they can't, especially males, they can't take care of their family.
Right.
They don't have enough income. They don't have enough opportunities to do things.
Mm-hmm.
So they wind up, you know, because drugs are being purposefully being
Put
made
in our
more
communities. Mm-hmm.
available to us,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then people
Mm-hmm.
turn to that, and then that just has a ripple effect in
Mm-hmm.
terms of you know the sexual assault on young people, the
Mm-hmm.
sex trafficking,
Mm-hmm.
the drug use among young people. It just
Mm-hmm.
has a ripple effect that just
Yes.
continues to go on and on. And so
Yes.
you've been able to address some of that to the degree that you have through the practice of yoga.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the fact that yoga is a tool that I can do my part. That
Mm-hmm.
I can show up and do my part. Whereas in other ways, I get frustrated because it's like, how can I be a part of this change? And sometimes I don't even know where to begin. But I love the fact that I can use yoga as a tool to do my part.
Yeah.
And show up, and I love that the children are responsive to it, and
Mm-hmm.
it actually works. It actually works.
So
It actually
you have
works.
any feel good stories that you can tell about your success with working with some young people?
um, yeah. So the center that I work at, it's a group home, and they actually live on campus. So I started there last February. So I've been there a little over a year now. So most of the girls, they stay at the facility for 6 months, and most of the boys are 9 months, as long as they don't have any incidents that cause them to stay longer. So I've watched some of them stay longer, and they because I have a grant, they got a grant for me to be there, to pay me to
Mm-hmm.
be there. um the person,
Well,
and
that's
this
a
is
big accomplishment right there, just getting some funding.
yeah, and I had to
Because
go through like 10 interviews to be the person to be chosen there. And I was really blessed because one of my yoga students works there. And she had been coming to my class, and she works with the girls. And she was like, my girls need this. I know what this is doing for me.
mm-hmm.
They need this. I'm going to talk. I don't know how, but I'm going to talk to some people and see about getting you in there. And she really fought to get me in there. And it took about 6 months. It was about a 6, 7 month process with lots of interviews, very extensive background checks. It was a lot to it, but it was so rewarding to be there. So lots of funny stories. So they came in and they didn't do interviews with the staff. They did actual interviews. The person who pays the grant,
Mm-hmm.
the funding that was given to them. So they came in and did interviews. So there was at least 5 other children who said that out of all of the activities that they have, that they like yoga with Miss
Mm-hmm.
Blue the best,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And there another funny story. And they was telling them how calm it makes them feel, and the one young man was talking about how since starting to do yoga with me, he realized that it started help him have a better relationship with his mother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it
Mm-hmm.
made him realize that sometimes how he would probably be driving his mother crazy, since he realized to calm down a little bit, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so one time I wasn't there for like 2 weeks. They were doing some repairs, and the one kid came in. He was like, "Miss Blue, where you been at? I thought I had to kill somebody around here. If they get rid of you, I'm gonna have to kill some people." You know, it's like it's not
Mm-hmm.
that serious.
Mm-hmm.
Don't kill. And I thought he was like really serious about having to kill
Right.
some people. So that made me feel really, really good. And there was one kid. So some of them, especially the boys, are very resistant. Um, because yoga is a vulnerable place for a lot of them,
Mm-hmm.
you know, especially because some of them come in there tough. You know, they come through the court systems where they've got in trouble. Some of them have ankle bracelets and things like that. So it's a very vulnerable space. And some of them have the perception that yoga's for girls, and you know. So then I'll do crow pose and like, can you do this? Do you think that this is just for girls? And they're like, okay, Miss Blue, I see you. All right, I'm gonna give it a try, you know. So them seeing me do something, some harder things sometimes
Mm-hmm.
compels them to like, okay, let me try this out, you know. But there was one young brother in particular who came in, and he hung with this other young brother that constantly got in trouble. So he was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a follower. So one day, I do remember coming in. One of the staff told me, he says, they the sweetest thing ever, but they will go from 0 to 100 in a minute. So, you know, always be alert, you know. And that always like stuck in my head. So this day, I got to witness this one young brother who did that on me. He literally went to 100. He started kicking the door. He started yelling and screaming. He wanted to get out of there. So the other brother was with him, and I felt his compassion towards me to
Mm-hmm.
have to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
So because before he would just sit on the side and he like, I'm just gonna watch today, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I would let him, because a lot of times them being in the space just watching and then, you know, seeing us breathe, I would notice they would start, whether they recognize it or not, they would start breathing with me, even if they over there like this,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
they would start breathing too, you know. And I was like, it's just one of those things, it's energy,
Right.
you know, whether they want to resist it or not. Just being, you know, I would tell staff, if they don't want to participate, it's okay, just let them sit on the side. They are still getting the benefits of just being in the space, just witnessing
Right.
sometimes.
Right.
So after him seeing me go through that incident, he felt so compassionate towards me that he said, Miss Blue, I'm gonna get his yoga a try. So
Mm-hmm.
he started out, you know, I said, you want to take your shoes off? No, I ain't taking my shoes off. So I was like, okay, you know, I don't resist them, like small things like that. Like
Right.
putting
Right.
in a little bit of effort is a whole lot for me. So I'm like, all right, keep your shoes on. It's your mat. You want to put your dirty shoes on? It's all good. Yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna put my shoes on it. So got in and we started doing Asar and men. That is one, those two poses working with young men, I can't even explain what happens.
So the pose of Asar
And the
and the
pose of
pose of
men.
men,
Yeah.
which are two uniquely Kemetic yoga postures that we do.
Yes. When I do
Mm-hmm.
that with those young men, it gives me chills. It is like I can't even explain what take place.
Mm-hmm.
But no matter how resistant they are, when we start going through these poses, right? And I'm like, they'll do their hands like this. I'm like, no, bring your thumbs. Let that connect that energy.
Mm-hmm.
Touch.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to touch yourself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Feel your hands, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they start turning their spine, no matter how resistant they are, it's like they compelled to like give in, and they start, you know, am I doing it right, Miss Blue? Am I doing it right? And then even if they like, oh shucks, my back cracking. I heard y'all heard that, you know, they,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because that energy is just shifting. And then when they go into the pose of men, it's I had one little boy just break down crying on me
mm,
one day on that
mm,
pose, and it took him back to when he was 7 years old. He just
mm,
started crying and talking about, it was my fault that, my father left. I know my mother blamed me, and it was so
mm,
emotional.
mm,
But just those two poses alone, doing those with those young men, it's like I can't even explain what takes place, but it's like magic. It's like
mm,
absolute
mm,
magic. It's absolute magic. And it's their favorite poses. They love it.
mm.
If they don't do nothing, a lot of times because you gotta remember their sex trauma, they don't want to do like a lot of the folding poses, the bending. So they don't want to do pyramid. And they're like, no, I'm not doing, that.
So they don't want to do things where they got to bend over
Yes.
because it, makes them feel vulnerable to,
Exactly.
yeah,
There's others who just like go through it, but there's ones who's like, no, Miss Blue, I'm not doing that. You're going too far. So
yeah.
I don't push them, I'm like, okay. Even like sometimes coming into tabletop on all fours, say like,
Mm,
no, Miss Blue, I ain't doing that. I'm like,
mhm,
no worries.
mhm,
Let's not do
mhm.
that. Stand up. Let's stand up.
Yeah.
And I go through tech and they like, no, I'm not folding for. I was like, okay, we could do everything standing. Let's stay. So it's like you were saying yesterday, you have to have the skills and the knowledge enough and the compassion to like go to their level, meet
Right.
them where they are
Right.
versus, this is how you got to do it. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. They
it's
have the,
quite rewarding
yeah.
working with them, and the most rewarding part is that it's not mandatory. I'm there
Mm-hmm.
every Monday,
Mm-hmm.
and it's optional, and they
Mm-hmm.
show up every week.
Yeah.
And some of the kids bring newbie, like, you gotta come meet Miss Blue, you gotta come try this. So that's quite rewarding that they show up every week,
Mm-hmm.
and they're selective that have been showing up the whole time they've been there. No matter what, they don't miss Monday.
Yeah.
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 So that's rewarding.
But that's good. That's
Hmm.
that's that's good. And two things, that's coming to my mind is number one is the power of, we don't really know, I do, we do Kemetic yoga. And so, you have people say, oh, people in ancient Kemet didn't do yoga.
Hmm.
And that's not yoga.
Hmm.
They try to bust us out over things, but they're not understanding that, you know, we, from our own experience, when we teaching people this stuff,
Hmm.
that they are having profound changes and
Hmm.
improvements in
Hmm.
their health, their
Hmm.
well-being, their mental
Hmm.
health, their psycho-emotional status.
Absolutely.
All of these things are occurring. And so you can argue, well, this is not blah blah. You know, I wasn't alive back then,
Hmm.
but I know when I see the image of
Hmm.
men
Hmm.
and I do it,
I already said, and you actually
yeah,
physically do it.
I feel stuff. And then
Hmm.
we know that understanding the anatomy and the physiology and the energy of the body,
Hmm.
that we can have traumas that's stored in us.
Yep.
And when we start to move, and it's not stretching. I hear people say, oh, that's just stretching. It's not stretching. It is
Mm-mm.
releasing, it's realigning, and all those things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's a total release of energy. I know sometimes on bad days I can practice and it makes a difference between changing my day from a bad day to
mm-hmm.
things ain't so bad,
Mm-hmm.
when I start moving that energy around.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the practice is amazing. I love the effects it have. I got to share that with you too. I have a whole like testimony that I've gotten from people
Mm-hmm.
who first time doing Kemetic yoga, who
Mm-hmm.
have practiced other practices of yoga, or Kemetic yoga being their first time ever practicing yoga. And I love the responses that people give, down to it was a new experience for them, but it seems so familiar. It seems so
Mm-hmm.
connected versus
Mm-hmm.
other practices that they may have taken. And that was the experience for me as well. Practicing and studying all the other styles of yoga that I have before practicing Kemetic yoga.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, well, I think that with Kemetic yoga, I think that we tapped into the conscious, we tapped into a consciousness that's related back to our ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
and we're doing something that is not just a physical practice or not just therapeutic, but it's also spiritual.
Yes, and it's liberating mind, body, spirit, and soul.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But you told me about a young man. I want you to talk about him, the one who had been incarcerated, and then he
yes,
got his shoulder together.
yes. So, COVID, coming off of COVID. So during COVID, I was not teaching physically in groups. So coming out of COVID, um, I started teaching. I turned one of my bedrooms at my house into a yoga studio, and I started doing private sessions, one on one. So I had a brother reach out to me, and upon him reaching out to me, he told me that he'd been incarcerated for years. I don't want to say the wrong. I want to say maybe like 12 or 20. It was definitely over 12 years or 20 years.
Mm,
I don't want to mix it up, but it was a long time he had
mm,
spent in jail. And he had told me he had did yoga in jail, and he wanted to get back into it. So he booked a private session with me. So just like I was telling you, um, my flesh was like, because he found me on social media, I'm like, is this safe, But my spirit was like, yeah, absolutely, let's book a session. So we booked that session, and I lived in Baltimore County, and he lived in far East Baltimore. So he drove a motor pad
mm,
from there to there, and I think he told me it took him 45 to 50 minutes to get over there on a moped,
mm,
and to be at my house by 7 a.m. to do
mm,
a private session. So upon doing the session, when he got there, I usually have everything set up. I had 2 mats down, everything ready. And when he got there, he set himself up beside the mat on the floor,
mm,
and I'm like,
mm,
this the mat is for you. And he was like, what's that? I'm like, we practice yoga on a mat. And he was like, oh, he was like, I've never used a mat before. I practice on the
mm,
concrete floors in the
mm,
jail. I'm like, well, it's optional to you. You could use the floor, but the mat is here. Give the mat a try. He
mm,
says, okay, I'm gonna give the mat a try. So, I did the usual, ask him if he had any injuries, if there was any parts of the body that he wanted to put emphasis on, so how I
mm,
knew how to guide him through the practice. And he was like, just do what you do, so we started practicing. And once again, I took him through Tekken, and we went from massage into the pose of men. And his shoulder opened up, and he told me about getting into a fight while he was in jail, and his shoulder had been messed up where he thought that it would never be repaired. It was just,
mm,
my shoulder's messed up for life. And through going through the pose of men, um, his shoulder cracked and open, and he said he had never been able to move his shoulder in the way that he moved it through the pose of men. And it was very emotional. He started crying, and it was funny and it was emotional at the same time. He was like, I'm telling you, he had tears in his eyes, and he was like, our ancestors, God damn it, they knew what they was doing. I'm telling you, they knew what they was
mm,
doing. So
mm.
it was very emotional. Um, Down to him being on the mat was emotional. Like everything about it
Yeah.
was like so emotional. And afterward, it was so, he couldn't thank me enough. And he told me stories about how yoga had saved him while he was in jail as well. Um, and
That's
he
another.
wanted to
That's another.
continue to pursue it. So
That's another example of the proof is in the pudding.
exactly.
Because people can say all
Exactly.
this theoretical stuff they want to say about Kemetic yoga, but there's something unique about it that is actually saving people's lives.
Hmm.
I know
Hmm.
it. I can say it probably saved my life.
Hey, look, I could say the same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
I could say the same thing.
yeah.
It definitely my sanity
Yeah, but you know, it saves my life all the time because you know we always going through. People think that, oh, you do yoga, nothing affects you,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we have trauma. Like I've lost two of my sons, you
Yes.
know, in the
Yes.
last 5-6 years.
Yes. Yes.
You
Yes.
know, and I know that you had some trauma with one of your sons. You
Absolutely.
want to talk about that?
Yeah, my son was arrested and accused of a murder and attempt to murder um, here in Baltimore, taken out of his bed at 5 o'clock in the morning, where he had no idea what was going on. They took him in, showed him the people that he was supposed to shoot, and he never saw the people ever a day in his life. Had no
Mm-hmm.
idea who they were. He had an alibi for the date and time. He tried to express to them. Um, my house is under heavy surveillance, and if you go on my phone, it will let you know where I was at on this date and time. And um, the cops told him, "Nigga, this ain't no first 48 hours. You going to jail for murder." And
Mm-hmm.
that was it. That was the only time that anyone had questioned him or asked him anything else. They just had him in jail. And then maybe a year after that, after him being there a year, they came and swabbed him for DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And yet and still nothing. There was no evidence of him being at the scene. So he spent 2 years in jail. Um, it was very traumatizing on the family, especially me having to visit my son in jail, who has never been in trouble before, never been arrested, don't even live that kind of lifestyle. And I'm not just saying that because my son, but truly because
Mm-hmm.
he is not that guy, you know.
Right.
And so just January the 9th this year, we finally went to court after, um, when I say all of his rights have been violated, from speedy trial to all of the legal stuff that I didn't even know anything about, that I learned during this process, were violated. Um, we were in court not even 7 minutes, and there was no evidence. All charges were released, and they could not try him again after holding him in jail for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Just there, not saying anything, you know.
So they kept him in jail for 2 years with
Mm-hmm.
no evidence of anything.
With no evidence of
Just
anything.
ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Now, but your son, now he has a remarkable mother. The incredible Michele Blu is his
Thank you.
mother. And then he was able to achieve some things while he was in jail because of the fact that, you know, he was able to influence other, you know, imprisoned people
Yes.
because of your efforts.
Yes. Yes. So I started sending him books, books from the list, and the first one was Ancient Future. And
Ancient Future by Wayne Chandler.
Wayne Chandler.
Yes.
Yes. So that was the very first
Mm.
book that I sent him. And that look, there you go over there, matter of fact.
Okay. Yep.
That was the very first book that I sent him. And that was like such an eye awakening for him, that he started doing study groups in jail.
Mm.
And upon him sharing the books with other guys in there, they started getting their loved ones to send them the books, and they would read these books together, where it became like a whole discussion, a whole
Mm-hmm.
and it had nothing to do with religion, because the Muslim brothers, the Christian brother, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
they've broken
Mm-hmm.
into categories in there. But this would become an open discussion with all of the brothers, you know, that
Right.
he would lead this. So he became Uncle Stink in there,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm. So they call him Uncle. That's a sign of respect.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because he's he's not a real young guy, but he's not an old guy. But he's
Exactly.
what he's like, about 40?
30, 35.
35. Okay,
Mhm.
35. Okay.
35. Yes.
So, but the other guys in there, they're much younger than him.
Yep.
Yeah.
The younger guys and the older guys.
Mm.
Yeah. So it was definitely as a parent and not having a child that ever went to jail or been in trouble, um, it was just as traumatizing for me as it was for him, because I had this visions of like jail movies and
Yeah.
things that happen on jail movies that could happen to my child. So it was very, very traumatizing for me to and I was worried a lot. I worried a whole lot, you know.
I know you did.
And
You
and
know.
I wasn't sharing my story with anyone,
Yeah.
for two reasons. For one, um, it was a murder, you know. So
Mm.
um, there were people in Baltimore that were coming and telling me things like they know who did it and they know what happened, um, and I didn't even know these people. So it's like, this is out here like this. I fear for my life because I'm like supposed somebody want revenge, or you know, I just didn't know. So um, that had me just like lay low. And two, I guess there was like embarrassment and you know, all of the things what comes with your child being in jail.
Mm-hmm.
As a parent, that's
Mm-hmm.
like the last thing that you ever want to happen to your child, you know. So yeah, I wasn't talking about it or saying anything about it. So I would still, you know, just show up for yoga, teach my classes, and listen to everybody else's stories. And in my mind, I'm like, you have no idea what I'm going through right now, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
thank God for my practice, which when I had my really, really rough, trying days, I would just get on my mat, you know, and get into my practice, and um, it would make things a whole lot better, a whole lot better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
People don't know, you know, the things that you know, a lot of people go through. You see people and you see them on social media or in the
Hmm.
public or something. You
Hmm.
think, oh, they got the perfect life. They
Hmm.
doing this. Nothing bothers them. It's
Hmm.
like, you know, sometimes
Hmm.
you be, you know, you might be going through hell, you know,
Yeah.
but you have to hold it together in
Yeah.
order to continue to do the work that you're doing,
Yeah.
because the work that you're doing is important, you know,
Yes. Yes.
and
And I always say, it's not about me. It's about seeking something greater than
mm-hmm.
myself. So yeah, I don't want to show up and um, you know, there was sometimes I was very emotional. I've even, there's been times that I was so emotional that I have broken down in my class.
Mm-hmm.
And and when I talked to like my students with there, I felt better, and I was like, oh, okay, I can talk about this a little bit, but this is not something I want to be going around, and this is the story that I'm
Right.
telling, you
Right.
know. Um, but yeah, there was sometimes that I had no control over, like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, because if my son was having a bad day, I didn't even have to talk to him, but I knew it. I felt it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I could feel it. And you know, some days it was challenging because he just couldn't understand why he was there, you know.
Right.
It was like, I don't even know why I'm here, and going through, you know, the emotions of the people around him, you know. You being in that environment, you can take on those emotions as well, no matter how strong you are, how much you're holding up through it, you know. So days like that for him would be hard days for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so the way I look at it, I can see that there was, we don't really know what effect that your son being in that environment and the things that he shared with the other folks in there. We don't know
Mhm.
what effect that's going to have on their future, and
Mhm.
how that
Mhm.
might change,
Mhm.
how that might have a ripple effect in changing other people's lives
Mhm.
because of what they
Mhm.
went through. Maybe they come out a better person,
Mhm.
and so on and so forth, you know. So I'm not saying that to say, oh, well, you know, it's a good thing he was in jail, but,
Right.
you know,
Right.
that's definitely not true,
It's
you
just
know.
that the experience could have been a lot worse. So,
Yeah.
being it what it was, there were some positive
Mm-hmm.
aspects out of such a negative situation.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but we always make something positive come out of something negative, you know. That's what we do. But yeah, I'm just glad that he's out now. He's working and
Yes.
he's thriving,
Rebuilding,
and
trying to get
yeah.
himself back on
Mm-hmm.
track. Yeah, so that's happy to see. I'm happy to
Yeah.
see that too.
Yeah, and the story, you know, the issue is not just your son, but it's like we need to think about this. because it's lots and lots of people who I encounter who have been incarcerated. You know, I have lots of people come to me to take, you know, to study yoga with me or to become a yoga teacher who have been incarcerated, you know, and I have one brother I'm thinking about in particular. I got to interview him too because you know, he's become a great healer. You know, dealing with yoga and herbs and all kind of different things. You know, and you know, he spent time. When I first met him, you know, he was all buffed up and tattooed and stuff. I looked at him. I said, "You've been in jail, haven't you?" You know, and the way I said it, you know, he just laughed, you know, because he didn't take offense to it, you know, you know, because you know, and so you know, he's a really good brother, really good friend of mine too, you know. So you know, yeah, we just about out of time. Time is moving.
Yes.
We got things to do. We got to go and you know, get your current class graduated and everything. Go to the studio. So you have anything? What? How can people get in touch with you? How about that?
I am on all social media platforms as Michele. That's Michele, 1L, and then Blue, BLU, without an E. On all social media platforms. My website is www.micheleblu.yoga. And you can Google me. You Google me, you'll see some of the work I've done, some of my stories. I just found that out recently through people telling me, because I've never really Googled myself until a couple people was like, "Yo, you popping up here, you popping up there." It's like, okay, so yeah, you can Google me.
Yeah, and in addition to your yoga, you know, you're an entrepreneur, you're a fashion designer. I mean, because I was looking at your studio, I saw all these clothes. I said, "You made all those clothes, right?"
Yeah. So me and my mother, we have a business together, Blue Treasures. So yes, we make one of a kind handmade pieces from clothing, jewelry, accessories. I paint, artwork, craft, crochet. So yeah, an array of one of a kind, unique Blue Treasures. That's the name of our line. So yeah, that's from clothes to coats, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's why I call it the incredible Michele Blu, because she's, you know, because she has so many different talents. And if you look around, this is her living room of her new abode that she just moved into. And you can see the art, you can see the album covers. She's very eclectic in the way that she you know, presents herself and the things that she does, the way she designs things. So you know, if you are, you know, wherever you are. People came to our workshop today. I mean, this weekend, they was from Denver, Texas. People came from all over the country to come to Baltimore.
You know, every time we've done it, we've had people come from everywhere.
Yeah. So come to Baltimore and check out Michele Blu at her studio and come to one of our retreats or our workshops, Alchemy of Kemetic Yoga, and check it out.
Stay tuned. We have dates coming.
Dates coming up. All right. So thank you very much. And thank you. And yes. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Without you, this wouldn't be taking place. So I'm so grateful. Like I always say, when I study, it just blows my mind. Just all that you've put into this. So I'm ever so grateful for you, for your mentorship, for your friendship. I'm just beyond grateful.
But thank you. I'm beyond grateful too. You're one of my favorite people on this whole planet. You're so gracious and kind and you know, and beyond. So I really appreciate you and love you very much.
I love you too.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you all out there, and hopefully you will, when you see this recorded on YouTube, I hope you like it and subscribe. Hotep.
Hotep.